Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers and this is Annie150 and we are ready to start rendering. So let's go ahead and get set up for rendering to see what our scenes looks like right now as it stands. We have three lights. We have a fill light, or excuse me, a key light, a fill light, and a rim light or backlight. And we only messed with the intensity of these lights. We haven't done anything else, so we need to see what the render will look like. So let's get the render and our screen all set up for it. Make sure you're in perspective mode. We want to make sure that we have in our panel view, we have a panel menu, and we need to click on our resolution gate and our gate mask. Make sure those two are on. Well, let's go ahead and get our composition set up. Once we have our gates on, we can go ahead and zoom in and go ahead and compose our shot. Let's make sure we see the top and the sides clearly. There we go. So we can get a good composition. Try to place the two dice in the middle of your composition area with your gate. And if you need a chart, a field chart, just go ahead and click on field chart right next to those two, and this can kind of help you gauge where you are in the center and all that. So just kind of gauge and then go ahead and click that off when you're ready. We need to set up our camera view, our perspective view. So go to view, go to bookmarks, and go to edit bookmarks. And I've already got a couple in here, but I'm going to go to show you how to do this. Go ahead and click on new bookmark, and you can name this new bookmark whatever you want. I'm going to call it Dice FIN 001. Hit enter and then click apply. Okay, if this doesn't work, what you need to do is go into your outliner. Okay, so if you don't see your outliner, you can do that by going to Windows and go to Outliner. And in here you can click on Perspective. Okay, with that selected, that selects your perspective viewport. You can go to View, go to Bookmarks, and now it should work. Your perspective viewport needs to be selected. It will turn white. You can see that white line around there, and the 960 by 540 shows up. You can see that a little bit better. Go to edit bookmarks and you can add your bookmark. Mine added just fine. I think it did. So I'm going to go ahead and close and let me test it. Zoom out, and I'm going to go to view, bookmarks. I'm going to go to the one I just created, and it's set in there, so we're good. So we can go and change anything in the scene. We can rotate around, we can move our dice around, we can click on our lights, change our lights, we can change our render settings, and we can go right back to our composition that we had before with our bookmarks by just clicking on it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our render settings. So I'm going to click on render settings, and in the Commons tab, you can see we have different tabs in here. We have Common, Arnold Renderer, we have System, AOVs, Diagnostics. If you do not see the Arnold Renderer, you need to make sure you go into your Windows, Settings Preferences, and in the Plugin Manager, make sure that is turned on. Make sure you have a check mark there. Okay? All right, with that said, once you do that, you have to turn this back off and then turn it back on again, so we'll see it. And you should see the Arnold Renderer once that's on. Go to the Comments tab, and we need to make sure our renderable camera is set to perspective. Okay, and then we need to set it to HD 540 for preview. When we have our lighting all set up, we can go to HD 1080. Alright, so let's go ahead and set it back to HD 540. In Arnold Renderer, we have two places that we're going to be messing with, like changing the values and the attributes. We're going to leave this at default. The higher we go, the longer the render will be, but the image will look much better. And in ray depth, we're going to do the same thing in here to get the best image we can when we are happy with our lighting. All right now we'll keep these settings low. Go ahead and close. And now we're ready for our first render. So let's go up to the clapboard with a little gear next to it. Next to that is IPR, and next to that is our full render. So I'm going to click on this. It's just a clapboard. Click on that. And you'll notice that I'm going to click on render. If you'll see a red arrow, go ahead and click on that, and I'll give you the newest update of the render. This is what we have so far, and we want to make sure that our renders look good. And right now we have got a little bit of noise in this image, which is normal for the settings that we have right now. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and put this into our render snapshot. So at the bottom right hand side you'll see a little camera. Click on that, and that will save your render that you have. Okay, we'll save that render. And I'm going to move it over to the side or down or whatever you need to do. And there's some issues that I have with this. It's a little dark. And we've got 3 different types of shadows going on here. We can see the backlight shadow, the fill shadow, and the key shadow. We just want to have one shadow in this scenario. So let's go ahead and get the lights set up a little bit better than they are, and get the shadows off. We just want to have the main shadow on. So let's go ahead and focus on that. So I'm going to go ahead and close this right now so we can work on stuff. We'll come back to the render in just a little bit. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit and fix these lights. So the main key light, you can see that we've got, I did change the intensity to 1. I'm going to change it to 1.2, okay, just to give it a little more oomph to the render, more of a studio lighting intensity. I'm going to scroll down, and we use ray trace shadows. The ray trace shadow angle is set at 0. That means that the shadow is going to be really, really sharp. Normally you won't see that in a studio setting. There's a lot of the shadows are kind of diffused out. So I'm going to start with 2. Now this will add some time to your renders, but you have to add it. Otherwise it's going to look really, it's going to look not realistic. Shadow rays we're going to set to 2. Yeah, that will change, give us a little more time on our renders, but it gives us a better shadow, especially when we're dispersing the shadows out a little bit, softening them up. Ray depth limit, we can leave it 3 right now. A big one here is Arnold. The Arnold renderer under here allows us to turn this light into and a color, can add colors to the light rays. So right now we're not going to add it up here. We're going to add it down under the Arnold settings. So use color, temperature, and we got it set it at it's defaulted at a neutral state. So I'm going to do 5,000. That'll warm things up just a little bit, the temperature up a little bit. We want the exposure to be exactly the same amount as the intensity. Again, if we run a little bit too bright, we can always turn this stuff down. Okay. Angle, we're going to keep that just the way it is. Samples, we're going to set that at 2. Okay. Cast shadows is on. Cast volumetric shadows are on, and everything else looks good. Let's go to the next light and make some changes to that. This one is set at intensity of 4. Scroll down. Use ray trace shadows. Let's turn that off. Okay, and we're going to turn off cast shadows and cast volumetric shadows. Those need to be turned off, as well as use ray trace shadows. And we're going to change. We can change the use color to 50 to 5,000, just like the other one. So we want to keep that consistent. Exposure to 0.4. Keep that consistent with the other light as well. So 0.4 and samples. Because we don't have a shadow, we're going to leave that as is. All right, so the next light, we're going to make some changes to that as well. 0.2, we're going to turn off use ray trace shadows, and we're going to turn off cast shadows and cast volumetric shadows, and we're going to click on use color temperature, set that at 5000. There we go. If your light is too red, you probably typed in 500 or 50 by mistake, and that would make it like almost a pink. 5 would make it black, so we want to keep it at 5000. If you make a mistake, you'll know it because you'll see it in your scene. If it's really, really bright red or pink or whatever, then you've made it some mistakes. You probably forgot a 0 in there. All right, with that done, we're going to go back to our view bookmarks and go to Dice Finished, this one I called it, and I'm going to do another render. So I'm going to click on render up here. Now it's not going to give us a render right away. We're going to have to click on the arrow, the red arrow, and you can see that we've got more of a yellow tint. So we might want to change the hue or the light temperature, but everything else is looking really, really good. As far as the shadows, I'm not really crazy about shadows being out there, and they're really black. Okay, so that can be a kind of a problem. So we're going to go ahead and put this, do a screenshot in here. So I'm going to pull that up and do another screenshot so we can see the differences. That's what we had before. I think the light intensity is better. I like that, but I'm not too sold on the warmth of the scene. So let's bring the warmth up a little bit more, or the warmth down, and get more of a neutral. And that's easy to do. You're just going to have to click on the light again, and then the temperature. Let's go to. It was 65. It was 6500. Let's do 5800. And let's do that for every light. 5800. That should cool things down a little bit as far as the color and the temperature of the scene. And let's go back to the main light again. And I'm going to change. See, I've got a really narrow angle, so I'm going to add probably more of a, just kind of angle that a little bit more like that. It's not going to change anything. You can see that it's changing the lights a little bit, but I think our temperature, I think our scene's going to look a little bit nicer if we do that. So I'm going to kind of face that this way at a sharper angle and see what that looks like. So I'm going to go back to view, bookmarks, and you'll be doing this a lot just to make sure that your shading looks good. So let's go ahead and, or I can make it go more like this and have the shadows go that way. Let's see which ones I like better. Probably away from the camera would be better. Let's try that. And let's do a render. Okay. Click on the arrow. Oh, that's much better. And we can see those shadows. I think we have nicer shadows, and I think everything's looking actually pretty good. Our shadows are really dark, and I can show you how to fix that. So I'm going to go ahead and add this screenshot to the render. So this is where we started. This is our second. It's a little bit too yellow, and then we've got finally have the right coloring of the light. You can see the difference between what we had first, and we added warmth, but not too much. This was way too yellow and orange, or whatever you want to call it, and this looks more natural. Okay, so now we're getting close. The shadows are looking a little too dark, so there's a couple things we can try. So with that light clicked, actually selected, I'm going to leave this render in here. I'll go ahead and close it. And with this light source, okay, we can change the angle of this to be around 2. This is kind of the same because we have this turned on now. The ray tracing is no longer being used. I'm going to keep it on though. But you can see that now we've got the angle to set it to. That should change that and disperse those shadows. They're still going to be a little bit too dark. Let's see what we get with that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on render again and go ahead and click on re-render it. And you can see that it is starting to diffuse that. We need a lot more diffusion. Okay, so I'm going to do snapshot again. You can see the difference between the two right here. It's crystal clear. You can see right there. Crystal clear, very sharp. And this one's started to diffuse that shadow, which is what we want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and close this again. And we're going to really bring this up to like 6,000. That might be too much. Woo! 6,000. Try 6, not 6,000. 6. And go ahead and render it again and see what we get with our renders. Oh, that looks a lot better. Okay, let's go 1:1. There we go. You can see it's giving us a more diffuse color, but the shadow is still way too dark. I'm going to go 1:1 again. Click on 1:1 up here. It'll frame it again back where we need it. So I think, you know, maybe we could do 8. Okay, let's do 8. And what do we want to do with the shadow color? If there's anything we can do with that. Shadow color is purely black. So let's bring that up. And you can see it's re-rendering as I bring that up. So let's just soften that shadow up a little bit. I think that looks pretty good actually. We definitely have a shadow, but it's not so dark. I can bring that down just a little bit. Want a shadow, but we don't want it to be overwhelming. Just kind of fine tune that. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. So the only thing I would say is I really don't like that highlight on the floor. That's really distracting. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out. And that's a little tougher to do. So what we'll need to do is go ahead and shut that off, the render off. Okay, so to get rid of that hotspot that we have on the floor, we're going to have to go to light linking. And before we can do that, we need to click on the table. Okay, if you're not quite sure, just click on the table. And we're going to have the outliner open. So go to Windows, Outliner, have that open. And we need to rename that. Instead of PCube 3, we need to call this table. All right, and enter. We probably should call, we got another cube in here somewhere, so I'm going to delete that. I got that cube. Let's call this dice 1. I'm just double clicking to rename it. Dice 1, hit enter, and double click on that. Dice 2, and enter. There we go. So now we can control the light linking. So I can literally go in here and wherever that hotspot's coming from, we can take the light linking off on the table. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. I'm assuming it's coming from our main light. I can't be sure. I'm assuming that. So what we can do is we can go ahead and go into Arnold, and the render is open, and see if we link them correctly. So so I'm going to go to Windows. I'm going to select the table, go to Windows. I'm going to go to Relationship Editors. I'm going to go down to Light Linking and Object Centric. And this is going to show the link that we have. So the table has all 3 of these linked. So if I turn these off and re-render that, it's just black. Okay? Which is kind of interesting, isn't it? So it ignores the table and it will just show the reflection of the dice. It doesn't even have shadows because the shadows are dark, so that doesn't really work. So I'm going to turn these on one at a time to see if it will react. And there it is. It's light number 3, the light 3s that we have. Shut that off and turn the rest of these on. And you can see that, there we go.